Hello, hello. I think it's all set. Okay. So this video is going to cover some of the basic uh, uh, line work that we're going to begin with. And I know I talked about some of the practice line work that you should be working out, which is the straight lines and things like that that hopefully you've already started to practice. And that was more or less the abstract concepts. In other words, you know, you're going across and trying to make a little set of lines that are parallel, that are the same size. You can practice that, you know, for a very long time, and you should practice those kind of things as much as you can. But taking these concepts, that is, you know, these simple straight lines, and then we develop them into simple shapes. We're going to try to utilize this technique in looking at things and trying to draw those things with the same concept. So that's the goal with these tasks for this first module. And so what you want to do is you want to, I'm going to give you a couple of photographs, and I would encourage you to work from life and from the photographs. And so, because it's important to sort of sense and see something for you know, that is from life and not so much from a camera. Okay, so try to work from life. Like I said in the previous video, perhaps I said this, perhaps I didn't, but I'm gonna repeat myself many times. That is, you want to try to work from life. You want to try to work out a certain kind of methodology. I talked about this. No, actually I didn't. I'm going to be talking about this first part of the drawing. That is, when we're in this stage, we're trying to sketch something, right? We're trying to sketch out or block in a drawing, right? So in other words, I'm going to block in or sketch in my drawing. That is, it's going to be very loose, it's going to be very sketchy and so forth. And you're going to do it with these straight lines, okay? The reason why we don't do round lines is that it's very difficult to be precise with round lines. And so it's very good to practice with straight lines to get your proportions much more closer to what they might be in real life. So the point of the straight lines is to get your proportions in this stage as close as possible. Okay, you're always going to be working on the drawing, and proportions are going to be one of these things that you're going to work out for a very long time in the drawing. Okay, so but sketching in itself is sort of a first stage process. We start out by this stage, which is the sketch or blocking stage. The second stage itself, I should put that there. The second stage itself is what I call the value stage, or the tone, or or a rendering stage. Okay, so you can think about these particular stages and why you would do certain things in those stages. The third stage itself is really the finish, right? The final drawings, the details and things like that, okay? And so here you're going to do details, you're going to do highlights and anything else, but you're going to basically finalize this thing at this stage. Now, the way you can think about the amount of time that could be spent in these stages is something that's very important to the process, right? You can think about this stage, the sketch stage or the blocking stage, as roughly a 20% of the overall time to the process, okay? You can also think about this stage to be basically the largest part of the drawing, okay? That is the rendering or the modeling, the value stage, right? And so you want to think about this as something that is going to take the longest time, because it's going to require a lot of different kind of juggling of a lot of things. And this stage is probably, I'm going to say it's much more difficult than this and this. The final stage, or just sort of finishing something, is really like less than 10%. Okay, so if you're breaking this down, you got to really think about it that way. You know, like, okay, I'm going to sketch something. I'm going to spend a certain amount of time on that. And in the sketch stage, your goal is to really trying to get a drawing that is nothing but line work, okay? Or a line drawing, I should say, okay? And so in the sketch, you're not putting in tone, you're not putting in value, you're not rendering. You know, especially as a student, you're trying to execute this in a way that is very particular for the stage. This is all line work, you know? So before you move into putting in value and things like that, you're going to work out all the mapping, if you will, of where things are, how tall something is, how short something is, and so forth. When you finish this stage, this is the what I call the light effect, okay? So this is basically describing what the light is doing. You know, what is it doing on the entire object or objects and so forth, or whatever the setup is. Here, the final stage is really just sort of putting in the last bits. It's really, it's sort of a like, you're just coasting down to finishing it, okay? So this is very important. I'm going to talk about this more and more as we progress. But we are in the first stage. We are sketching in or blocking in our drawing, okay? And we're going to do that in a very specific way. Like I said, we're going to do it with these straight lines, right? And we're not going to do any round lines, not yet. We're going to get to round lines, but we're going to try to draw as much straight lines as possible. So I'm going to give you these photographs, and like I said, I encourage you to work from the photos and from life. So if you have a bottle or something at home, you know, just sort of set it in front of you somewhere and just start drawing that bottle, okay? And so you want to try to draw things, okay? You're going to try to draw things this way. You know, I'll give you the photos of some basic shapes, okay? And they're going to be fully rendered. You know, these are photographs that have light and this and that. But what I want you to do is I want you to draw these in a very, very simple way. That is, they're all line work. You know, you're not trying to do anything else with them. You're trying to draw them with straight lines, and you're trying to be very minimal in certain ways, okay? So let's say there's a bottle or something, okay? So the way to handle drawing things in general, so if there's a cube of some type, which I think there are a few photos that I will send you for a cube, you know, you want to try to sort of sketch in with straight lines, you know, this little cube, okay? Notice how I'm sketching. I'm sketching loosely, lightly, with angular lines, you know? And if I take something like even a sphere, let's say, here's my sphere, right, that I have as a photo. Well, the way I'm going to handle the sphere is I'm going to sort of block it in or rough it in with these angles, right? I'm not going to really draw anything with round lines, okay? I'm going to force my practice to be very specific, and you have to be very specific about your practice. You can't just say, well, I'm just going to draw. Well, you have to know what is it that you're drawing, how is it that you're drawing, how are you really being very specific about what you're doing, okay? And as a beginner, you should really take that to heart, that you have to be very specific. If you wanted to learn to play basketball and you show up on the court and you say, well, I just want to learn to dunk, that's probably not where you start. You start by dribbling the ball. And so that's what you're doing here. You're trying to dribble the ball by looking at the ball, by practicing it in a very, very specific way. The goal is not to draw the circle in some sense, but it's to draw a circle that is done with these kind of lines, okay? And so let's say, you know, we have some sort of a bottle that you're looking at, right? Around the house or in a photo or something, you know, you see. And so here's the bottle. Hope you can see that. Oh, let me crank this up just a tiny bit. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. But that bottle itself, I'm gonna start off by looking at it in a way, again, with straight lines. I'm gonna say, okay, here's, I think, the top, maybe here's the bottom, here's the side of it, here's this side of it, here's the neck, here's the sides, and so forth, right? And so I'm sketching it in. I'm not trying to finish it. I'm not trying to render it. I'm just sketching it in. These aren't finished drawings. This is the first stage of a process, okay? And so I'm trying to work in a way that is very specific to the first part here, okay? When you go and you put these straight lines, eventually things will turn round in some sense. You'll start to see that, that organicness come around, okay? You can also use your kneaded eraser, and I hope you did get one of these. The kneaded eraser is very useful because you can knead it, you can shape it to whatever you want, and then you're going to sort of take that and you can lighten up some of these things, right? You can sort of take off some of the information that you don't want if you wanted to sort of refine it just a little bit more, just to take that block-in drawing and push it a little bit more. Still, the goal is to, you know, block it in and also get to a line drawing, you know. And so you can continue to do this. You can refine it as you go further and further, but you can certainly erase it and continue to refine these things. But so anyway, but looking at this bottle, I'm gonna, again, like I said, try to work this out with nothing but straight lines, okay? So I'm gonna rough it in, I'm gonna try to line up things, you know, and the first stage here is really about a rough drawing that you're not thinking about even keeping to some sense, but this is sort of a scaffolding or a template for the drawing that is going to be more and more refined, okay? So we can think about it that way. Let's see, one more thing is like, you can use your pencil to do this. You know, it's probably not going to show up here too much because this is graphite and it's sometimes a little tough to see in the camera, but you can certainly do it with a pencil. It's nice to have a sharp point. I was using charcoal there. You know, you can get comfortable with whatever medium that you like. By the way, speaking of mediums, the advantage to using a pencil versus charcoal is that when we get to the second stage, that is the rendering stage, if I'm trying to make something really dark, you know, and by the way, this is newsprint, it's not our normal drawing paper. So, and it doesn't matter. For me, newsprint is fine for practice. It really, you know, if you can get a newsprint pad to practice on, that's wonderful because it's super cheap and really kind of nice to work with, okay? So now the advantage in the second stage, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, is that when we work with trying to render something or trying to model something from light to dark, charcoal, it has a huge advantage because this is as dark as this pencil is going to go. And this pencil is a 6B, which is pretty soft and dark. And I'll talk about these numbers later on as well. But you can see how dark charcoal goes. This is compressed charcoal. This is vine charcoal. This is what I'm holding here. And this is graphite. This is our normal pencil that we use in schools and so forth, okay? So, but that's the advantage of this. But for this part of the drawing that is practicing, you can certainly use the pencil to sketch in and do these straight lines and so forth. So use a pencil, use a charcoal, whatever tool you want to use. I am going to talk about something else that is in this bottle, that is symmetry. Symmetry is something that is going to be tackled very particularly, you know, and so, but right now I don't want us to inundate you with a lot of stuff. I just want you to focus on drawing these objects and these things in a straight line, angular line way. Keep your lines, by the way, very loose, very light. Be gentle, you know, don't just sort of bulldoze, you know, your lines into here and just be like, okay, you know, here I am like this. don't do that. Try to be very gentle, be sensitive with your touch, okay? The other thing about holding your tool is that you want to try to hold your tool from the back here, right? Whether it's this pencil or this charcoal, I'm always trying to get distance. I don't draw like I'm writing. I don't do this, I might do that at some point towards the end, but in the beginnings, I'm always going to try to stay very light by holding the tool from the back, and so it gives me that range, and I can do long lines. Long lines are very difficult, and so, but if you have sort of this wand, you can definitely get a lot more straighter lines. And I think I talked about this in some of those first videos with the practice, okay? So anyway, but this is what you're going to do as a practice for the first modules, the first module, and this is all to cover the basics and the basic practices as we move forward. Each week, of course, we're going to move forward as much as we can, but we're going to try to maintain the different stages of the process. And like I said, this first stage is the first stage, which is the sketch stage, which is roughly 20% or something like that of that process, okay? So that is all. If you have any questions or concerns, please email me, and we'll try to figure out stuff, okay? All right, stay tuned for the next video. Okay, see ya.